Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're unpacking something truly profound. We're mapping out an emotional landscape that, honestly, so many of us navigate, but very few actually talk about out loud. We're following the journey of someone named Ellie. Now, Ellie, she's just an ordinary girl. She's literally the person you might stand next to in the coffee line on a Monday morning or sit across from on the subway. Outwardly, she's checking off her to-do list, scrolling on her phone, but inwardly, she's carrying this quiet, deafening internal noise. And we're going to break down exactly where that noise comes from, and more importantly, how we learn to quiet it.
The source material immediately strips away any illusion that Ellie is just some dramatic fictional protagonist. It literally says she doesn't stand out from the crowd. She could be anyone, a composite image built from 100 different stories, a real friend of yours, or, and this is where it gets really compelling, she might just be a hidden part of you. You know, that part you've been trying so desperately not to notice.
So, I've got to ask you directly, right up front. Is Ellie actually you? As we go through this explainer together, I invite you to just lower your defenses a bit. Don't look at this as just data or some distant case study. Really look for your own reflection here. Because Ellie's story, it's fundamentally about what happens when the very foundation we rely on suddenly cracks.
And that brings us to the next phase of her life, a phase the source material bluntly calls the clash with reality. Let's look at the absolute stark contrast here. On one side, we have this beautifully secure childhood. And hey, it wasn't perfect in some shiny plastic way, but it was incredibly secure. She was deeply wanted, her voice truly mattered, and she felt solid ground under her feet. But then, the fractured adulthood. This is not the adulthood she was promised in teenage diaries. It's a reality marked by a sudden, agonizing loss of unconditional support. And here's a hard truth, the text reveals. Childhood security, sadly, does not guarantee adult resilience. That drop from feeling entirely supported to feeling entirely alone, it's absolutely devastating.
When that unconditional support just vanished, it left behind what's described as a terrifying new emptiness, the cold void. And interestingly, research shows our brains actually process deep emotional isolation using the exact same neural pathways as freezing physical cold. Imagine just suddenly freezing in a place where you've always been warm. So she did what literally any of us would do. She took a desperate risk to find someone, anyone, who could just stay near and fill that massive gap. She went searching for external warmth.
So how does that search play out? It happens in steps. Step 1 is seeking that external support. But then we hit step 2, the incredibly painful realization that the external savior, the perfect person to fill the void, simply does not exist. Now, it'd be so easy to see that as a total failure, but it's framed beautifully here. Realizing external fixes don't exist isn't a defeat at all. It's actually step 3. It is the absolutely crucial, necessary start of a deep, entirely internal learning process. But getting to that internal learning takes time. The road is long, and man, is it messy. Because when Ellie's life felt completely out of her hands, when that void was just too loud, she found something else. And I really want to emphasize this heavily, because what happens next is not about weakness. It is about survival in the middle of chaos. It's all about the illusion of control. The source material forces us to completely reframe our understanding of an eating disorder right here. It fiercely dismantles this whole misconception that it's just some superficial issue with food or a diet gone wrong. No, it defines it as a complex, intensely toxic relationship. It's a mechanism, something used to just grab hold of some semblance of control when absolutely everything else in life feels entirely chaotic and overwhelming. You really have to understand how this toxic relationship operates. It's highly manipulative. It creates a deep dependency where it feels virtually impossible to escape, all while handing over that false sense of control we just talked about. But maybe the most terrifying part, how it masks itself in everyday routines. It integrated into Ellie's daily rhythms so quietly, so seamlessly, that the people around her had no idea. And honestly, for a long time, neither did she. She was completely trapped in plain sight. But listen, the dark doesn't last forever. The text details a critical turning point, a moment where Ellie finally pulls back the curtain and sees what's truly happening to her body and her mind. She sees the eating disorder for what it is, not a comforting routine, but a highly destructive force. Recognizing it is huge, but it's only half the battle. The next step, admitting vulnerability. And that vulnerability is distilled perfectly into 4 incredibly heavy words: I cannot cope alone. I mean, just think about the immense courage it takes to say those words out loud. For Ellie to admit her struggle and accept that she desperately needed support from a community, that was the ultimate turning point of her whole story. It was the moment she finally stopped hiding in the void. Which leads us straight into this beautiful visual metaphor, rebuilding the puzzle. Ellie's universe had essentially become a shattered puzzle, right? Pieces scattered everywhere by all that loss and chaos. But once she admitted she couldn't cope alone, the painstaking work of putting those pieces back together could actually begin. And the best part? She didn't have to rebuild it by herself. There's this profound gratitude expressed for the people who showed up. And these weren't necessarily trained experts with magic wands. They appeared unexpectedly. They were all different ages with totally different experiences. And crucially, they didn't offer quick solutions. They didn't try to fix her. They just provided a quiet, steady presence in her darkest night. Every single one of them just held a piece of her puzzle. Let's pull back for a second and look at the macro view of this entire journey. From that secure validation of childhood, dropping into the sudden loss of support in adulthood, the months of chaos, surviving purely on the illusion of control, and finally, the years of healing. The text is incredibly clear about this. This rebuilding is deeply nonlinear. Healing is slow. It's sometimes really painful. And honestly, it is never, truly, completely finished. I absolutely love this quote. This is not about becoming a better version of yourself. The author actively rejects that phrase because, frankly, it promises way more than reality can deliver. This explainer, it's not a toxic positivity seminar. It's definitely not about self-optimization. It's simply the raw, unvarnished truth about accepting long-term trauma recovery. It's about learning how to just be, even when things are broken. As we bring this explainer toward its conclusion, I really want to loop back to how we started. We've talked a whole lot about Ellie, but remember how we said Ellie might actually be a reflection of you? The source material wraps up with a series of deeply intimate questions, and I want to pose them directly to you right now.
First up, is there an unquestioned void in your life that you are desperately trying to fill? We all have hidden voids, right? But how often do we actually stop and bravely question where they came from? What did you lose that you are trying so hard to replace?
Second question, is there someone you need to say sorry or thank you to? Really think about the unexpected people in your own life, the ones who sat with you in the dark, who held a piece of your shattered puzzle without ever asking for a single thing in return. Do they know how much that meant to you? Third, when did you last admit that you couldn't cope alone? Look back at your own necessary moments of vulnerability. It takes an unbelievable amount of strength to ask for help. Are you allowing yourself that grace right now? Fourth, is a physical habit or routine holding you in place? This is all about examining our own coping mechanisms. It's fascinating. Trauma researchers often note that our physical bodies will actually build routines as emotional armor when our minds get too overwhelmed. Just like Ellie's eating disorder, sometimes our habits feel like they're helping us survive, but they're literally keeping us trapped. The body speaks when words have completely failed. So what is your body trying to tell you? And finally, I want to leave you with this incredibly powerful thought to just sit with today. Look at your own life. Look at your own unresolved healing journey. Which fragment of your puzzle is currently set aside, untouched, ignored, and who was it that put it there? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Take some real time with these questions today. See you next time.